Geometry. This is your Unit 1 formative quiz review. You can find this document in the Unit 1 documents in your class notebook. I went and distributed that today. All right, so first off, vocabulary that you need to know. We may not have explicitly addressed all of these geometric definitions, so I'm going to go ahead and go over them now. First one, an angle. Two rays or two line segments that share a common endpoint. So Q right here is my common endpoint. And then these are two rays because they have arrows that go on forever. If it were two line segments, it would look like this. All right, so an angle can be formed by two rays or two line segments that share a common endpoint. All right, line. A line of points that extends infinitely, which means forever. Infinitely means forever. Forever. In two directions. And you can see the notation here has arrows on both ends. That means it continues to go on. So like right here, this is point A and this is point B. You can see the labels. So we would call this line AB, and we'd use this little notation of a line up top to designate line AB, so you know what line we're talking about. I'm going to quit leaning into the web camera because that cannot be flattering or entertaining for you guys. All right, line segment. All points between and including 2 points. So here's point A and here's point B. The line segment is everything in between and includes those 2 points. That's how I would name line segment AB. You'll see the difference between the two is the arrows and the no arrows. All right, a circle is the set of all points in a plane that are a fixed distance from a given point. So you see the circle P, every single point on the circle is exactly the same distance away from the center, right? And that distance is called the radius. So if I were to take this radius and move it all the way around, it would form that circle. So a circle is a set of points that are equal distance from the center. All right, parallel lines are two lines on a plane that never meet. They don't intersect, they're equidistant apart forever and ever. And you would designate them with little arrows like that. That means they're parallel. I know I briefly touched on perpendicular lines when I showed you my cross like that. So two angles that intersect to form right angles. So right angle is 90 degrees. So these two lines intersect to form 4 right angles. It's not perpendicular if they don't form right angles. So these two lines are not perpendicular right here. And I ran out of space. But they're not perpendicular because they don't form right angles. To be perpendicular, you have to form 90-degree angles. So this example and that example are both perpendicular. All right. Translations. All right, so remember, translations slide or move the pre-image left or right or up and down. A change in the x value will move the pre-image what 2 directions? Left and right. A change in the y value will move the pre-image down or up. Remember, left and down are signified by a negative sign. Right and up are signified by a positive sign. All right, so you've got your translation notation and your mapping rule. Just pay attention to the order. The first one is the x value, the second one is the y. And then also pay attention to the signs, right? A negative in the x means left. Positive in the y means up. All right, so let's go ahead and translate this example here. So they gave us a mapping rule. X plus 4 means what direction? I hope you said right 4 units. And then y minus 5 is what direction? I hope you said down 5 units. All right, so when you have a graph like this, you can actually just go ahead and put your pencil on the point and move it. So if I'm taking all of these points right 4 units, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is A prime. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with B. right 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's B prime. C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is C prime. And then D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so when you connect the dots and admire your finished beautiful product, you should be able to check your work just by looking at it. Number one, the shapes should be the same. So if you messed up on one of the points, the shape will be off, and that's how you'll know you did it wrong. But remember, a translation is rigid. So it's the same shape, same size. Does this look like the same shape and the same size? Yes, it does. It's beautiful. All right, so that was translation. All right, I want you to go ahead and try example 2 on your own. So go ahead and pause the video and try example 2 on your own. After you tried your translation, hopefully it looked like this. So your x is negative, so left 3, and your y is negative as well, so down 4. So this is my shift left 3 and down 4. You can go ahead and pause the video and compare the points that you plotted on yours. All right, reflections. A type of rigid transformation, and remember that word rigid means same shape, same size, in which the pre-image is flipped along a line of reflection to create an image. All right, you need to have these rules with you on the quiz. So you can see if you're going over the x-axis, your rule is going to be to change the sign of the y. This is what's changing. All right, if you're going over the y-axis, you're changing the sign of the x. If you're flipping over the origin, that's the same as reflecting over the line y equals negative x. And you're going to change the place of both. You're going to flip the x and the y and change the sign of both. If you're reflecting over y equals x, you just change the position of both. All right? So using our rules, you can see how it works. If you're reflecting over the x-axis, the only thing that changed was the -5 to a +5. You just changed the sign. Meaning that it was a negative to begin with, so we changed the sign to a positive. All right, here I have, I'm going to change the sign of the x, so 3 -5 becomes -3 -5. Here I'm going to flip these and change the sign of both of them. And then right here, all I do is flip them, flip their position. Okay? So the vertices of triangle ABC is point A, point B, and point C. If ABC is reflected over the x-axis, what are the coordinates of A prime, B prime, C prime? So let's go ahead and write the pre-image points out like this. Okay, and now I'm also going to write my rule. So if I'm going over the x-axis, I want you to think about this. Go ahead and look at an x-axis down here. If I was flipping over an x-axis, I'm flipping it from either up top to the bottom or from the bottom to the top. So I'm changing the sign of the y. So what I'm going to do is highlight the y in every single point. You could highlight or you could circle. So when I'm reflecting over the x-axis, my rule is that I change the sign of the y. So everything stays the same except for the sign of the y. So let's go ahead and flip these. A prime is going to be 2, -2. B prime is going to be 4, -5. And C prime is going to be 6, -2. So all I did was change the sign of these y values, and these are the coordinates of my reflected triangle. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. We're using the same triangle. but we're doing different rotations. So now we're reflecting over the y-axis. So if we're reflecting over the y, change the sign of the x. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so you can see I highlighted all the x values, and those are the only values that are changing the sign, right? So this positive 2 becomes a negative 2, and so on. All right, remember the rule, if we reflected over the origin or reflecting over this line, y equals negative x, that means I'm going to flip the places and change the sign. So I'm going to flip them and change the sign. I wrote out my pre-image points, so let's go ahead and flip them and change the sign. So when I flip these two, it's still 2, 2, but then I also need to change their sign. So it's going to be a negative 2, negative 2. It doesn't look like I flipped them because they're the same number, but we did flip them. All right, here, let's flip these and change the sign. So b prime is going to be negative 5, negative 4, because I flipped them and I changed the sign. And then c prime is going to be negative 2, negative 6, because again, I flipped them and changed the sign. All right, go ahead and try this last one. Pause the video and apply the rule for y equals x, which is just flipping the two positions. Okay, for this reflection rule, all we're doing is flipping them. We don't need to change any sign now. So my a prime actually stays the same, 2, 2. My b prime is going to be 5, 4 because I flipped them. And the c prime is going to be 2, 6 because I flipped them. So these are the 4 major rules right here. And now you are confident in how to use them. All right, for these next ones, these are problems straight from the packet, so I'm going to go through these quickly. Basically, we're identifying the line of reflection, which is the line that if I folded it over, the points would match up exactly. So you can see that these images are being reflected over that line of reflection. So we need the equation. Well, I know that this is the x-axis, which is a horizontal line, and the equation for a horizontal line is going to be y equals whatever number it is on the y-axis, so y equals 0. This one is going up from left to right, so this one is y equals x, and this one's going down from left to right, so this is y equals negative x. Okay, you pause the video if you need some time to catch up on those. Okay, so you'll see this says draw the line of reflection that reflects triangle ABC onto A prime, B prime, C prime. You can see this line of reflection right here. The equation of this line of reflection, it's a horizontal line, so it needs to be y is equal to a number. And it hits on the number 1 on the y-axis, so it's y is equal to 1. That's my line of reflection. All right, let's go ahead and we'll do one example together. This reflect the line over y equals x. So that should be one of your rules. So you should go back and look at the rule. The rule is xy becomes yx. All I do is flip them. So what I want you to do is identify the pre-image ordered pairs for A, B, and C. You'll see I wrote down all the pre-image points. So A is negative 2, positive 3. B is negative 3, positive 1, and C is negative 1, 1. So now I'm just going to apply my rule to get my A prime. So my A prime is just flipping these two. So if I flip these two numbers, my new ordered pair is going to be 3, negative 2. All right, what about B prime? All right, if I flip these two, I'm going to have 1, negative 3. And if I flip these two, I'm going to have 1, negative 1. All right, go ahead and plot the new image points and we'll see if it looks like a reflection. This is what your image triangle should look like. And here is our line of reflection that we were flipping over. Remember, it was y equals x. So it's positive from left to right. So this looks about correct. If I fold this on top of each other, each of the points should line up exactly. Now we're on reflect over y equals negative x. So remember the rule with y equals negative x is that xy turns into, we flip them and we change their sign. All right, so let's go ahead and write the pre-image points out. So I'll give you a second to pause the video and do that. I wrote my pre-image points out. So all I did was use the coordinate plane and the points on them. So A is 1, 1, B is 5, 1, and C is 1, 5. All right, so to reflect over the line y equals negative x, I flip them and I change their sign. So A prime is going to be, let's flip them and change both their signs. All right, let's do the same for B. I'm going to flip them, so the 1 comes first and the 5 comes second, and then I change both their signs. So negative 1, negative 5. All right, now with C, flip them and change the sign. 5 comes first now, and the 1 comes second, and they're both positive, so they both become negative. All right, let's go ahead and plot A prime, B prime, C prime. This is what your triangle should look like. Now remember, the line y equals negative x is going down from left to right, right through that origin. So this looks like a good reflection, because if I folded it on that line, the points would match up exactly. All right. Now I want you to, my instructions got cut off on this page, so I wrote them up at the top. I want you to go ahead and reflect this over the x-axis and reflect it over the y-axis. So I'll give you a minute to go ahead and do that, and I will put my answers up so you can check your work. You started off with writing down the pre-image points that you see on the coordinate plane, so I went ahead and labeled T, Y, and I. Now when I'm reflecting over the x-axis, it's going to just flip this figure down. So when it flips the figure down, we're changing the y sign, right? Y is positive up here, and it's negative down here. So when I flip it, I change the sign of the y. So just think it's opposite from what you see. If we're reflecting over the x, the y value changes. So I went ahead and highlighted it. I want you to go ahead and change the sign of each of those y's and then plot out the new image. I'm wondering if you got stuck on I prime. You can't change the sign of a 0, so it's just going to stay 0. All right, now that you've checked your work for all the primes, go ahead and plot it, and we'll see if it looks like a reflection. Looks like a perfect reflection to me, if I do say so myself, but I mean, I get paid to do this. All right, reflection over the x-axis. Now let's go ahead and try this one, reflection over the y. So if we're reflecting over the y, we're moving the x value from negative to positive. So we're changing the sign of the x this time. So go ahead and write your image points out and just change the sign of the x value. All right, here are my new image points. So you can see the negative 4 became positive, the 0 stayed 0 because I can't change the sign on that, and this negative 5 became a positive 5. All right, I'm going to plot the points and check to make sure it looks okay. I messed up this one a little when I was trying to connect my lines, but you see it, right? You see what it should look like. All right, so does this look like a reflection over the y, where if I folded this across, all of these points would match up? All right, now we're on to the last section. Name that transformation. So we've already talked about 3 of the above transformations, right? We talked about dilations and how they change size. We've talked in depth about translations and how they slide left, right, up, and down. We've talked about reflections, reflecting over the x, the y, the line y equals x, and the line y equals negative x. So the only transformation we haven't talked about is rotation. So looking at this, this is what rotations look like. See how I'm rotating this f around a point. I'm turning it. So rotations are turn. I'm turning this figure here. Now this might look like a reflection, but it's a rotation. Imagine taking your finger and rotating this around the origin. Same with this. I'm rotating this figure. So I want you to know what rotations look like, because we will be doing that after the quiz. All right, that's about it. Just let me know on reminder email if you have any questions before you take the quiz next week.